like to be in his
And they
service
said
one
we'll
more
understand
time.
it better by and by. Yes,
Yes, I understand it. I understand it. I understand why they said, okay, every shot I ain't sleep, I get it. I girl, there's so much that I get now that I
right.
did not get
Yeah,
before. But it's good hearing your voice.
that's right.
Talk to us. What's going on
Hey,
today?
good hearing you. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is doing great today. I was on a recent trip to Morocco, which I have now uh, clearly indicated is certainly my second home at this point. And on a recent trip, I had the privilege to visit an ancient Berber home. The Berber people are the native people of Morocco. Berber, short for barbarian, which the Romans gave them that name because the Romans at the time felt like anything that wasn't Roman had to be barbaric. And so the word Berber, the name Berber, is an offshoot of the name barbarian. And going through one of these ancient Berber homes, walking through each level, looking at the ancient tools they used to use, how they would reduce wheat to grain, how they made their own oils, all of these different tools, how they made their own carpets and rugs and tapestries, and just going through every room of the house, learning custom after custom. And it wasn't until the end of the tour that I came outside, and the guide that was with us that day, he began to explain that there are two doors to the house. There's a large door and there's a small door. And standing outside, you could clearly see the difference between the two. To my left was the small door. In front of me was the big door. Why are there two doors to this house? And he began to explain that in ancient Berber culture, people would travel via foot through the desert, through the Atlas Mountains. And when they got tired, they would seek shelter and refuge at a local home. And because they are so hospitable and believe in being great hosts, no one would ever be denied. They would be given shelter for their journey. But here was the caveat. They had to use the little door. If they weren't a friend of the family, if they were not an acquaintance, they had to use the little door. And behind the little door was a small room where they would be kept, they'd be housed, they'd be kept warm, they'd be given blankets, they'd be provided hospitality, they would be fed. But they had to stay in that room for 3 days. And in that 3 days, if they proved themselves to be trustworthy, if they proved themselves to be willing to help the family, if they proved themselves to be a good person, it was then and only then that they were allowed access to the main house and going through the big door. Someone is confused this morning and wondering, Tish, where are you going with this? I'm talking about access. Who has access to the big doors in your life? What have you given access to the little door that maybe should have access to the big door? I've come to find, Santita, that we are really quick to call everyone our friend. We're really quick to have an acquaintance, and then immediately we want to drive stakes in that relationship and think it's more important than what it is. I want to encourage somebody today to assess your relationships and where you are in life. Are you allowing little door people to have access to your big door? That's a question for us today. Or maybe not just people, but things in your life. Perhaps there's a dream that you've trapped behind the little door, a goal, some sort of aspiration that you've trapped behind the little door, kind of biding your time a little bit to see if it's worth it. Is this relationship worth it? Is this job worth it? Is this dream worth it? Is this manuscript worth it? If that's you today, I'm telling you, it's probably already proven itself. You know what you need to do. And now is the time to give all of your dreams, your goals, your aspirations access to the big door so that you might move forward in life. And so that's the word today. What are you giving big door access to? And what are you giving little door access to? And I cannot not say it this way as a Baptist preacher who believes in Jesus. This is why we love him, because he accepted the lowly place of the little door for 3 days. But after that, I'm told, he rose again, proved himself trustworthy, and gave us access to a whole kingdom. And that's the good news.
That is the good news. Because we do give people just free and open access. I know I've been very guilty of that, but that's, I'm from a family of ministers, right? And so you don't close yourself off from people. And you know, my father said something, oh, Pastor Tisha Dixon Williams, that really prompted my thinking. He said it to me just a few weeks ago. A lot of people who know him who have said he's probably the kindest person that they know. And honestly, my mother said, and she's been married to him 60 years come December 31st. She said, you know, your father doesn't have a mean bone in his body, not one. And he really doesn't. I've never met a person who's more forgiving. And when I tell you the things that people have done to him that have been cruel, oh my gosh, from his childhood on, just the cruelty, but he continues to embrace and love people and bring them in. And his first response will be, you know, you've got to forgive them for they knew not what they do. I'm like, okay. And he said, you know, to me, because my mother was on him about someone who was particularly vicious, not just cruel, but vicious. And she said, you know, you need to leave this guy, because my mother is like the voice of reason. And, you know, that's his wife, and he will listen to her. She said, you know, you need to leave him alone, because this guy he's a horror. He's not only been cruel to you, he's been cruel to your children. And he said, you know what? And he looked at me, he said, baby, you do realize that the people who've been cruelest to me, I've had to help, and many of them I've had to bury. He said, and it gave me joy to help. He said, and I didn't feel like, haha, I'm helping you. He said, you know, that's what God wants me to do. He said, and that's enough.
Yeah.
So we need those doors. And people do need to prove themselves to you, but you need to know that no matter what happens, it's going to be all right. God's going to work it out. God's going to protect you. So you just keep on, as my Uncle Mickey said, doing the right things for the right reasons. And my father says that all the time too. You just make sure your heart is clean. How about that? And it's amazing that we talk about the Berbers, the way that, you know, we've taken the European wording for the Berbers, when they have the most enduring carpets in the world. You know?
That's right.
I mean, they are
And the
known
most
for
enduring faith and strength.
Strength, you know, just for their works, from their hands to their faith. They are known for being just a stellar people. But you know, the Lord is working that out too, because for you to give us this word today, and I want to thank you for that. For you to give us this word, it's a blessing, because no matter what people call you, it's what God calls you. And it's what God has called you to do. I don't know. That was just in my heart as I was listening to you. So it doesn't matter what man or woman calls you. Doesn't matter what they do, Pastor.
That's right.
You can outlive that. I hope you write this stuff down. I mean, because every week you give us something. Not what I'm saying. I'm saying what you're saying. Every week you give us something that makes us, you know, Medi can't wait to get you on. She said, Medi, my sister attorney Rodriguez, she can't wait till she's like, oh wait, you know, is she did you get her up yet? And I just want to thank you. I just want to thank you for being with us and for being so faithful. And, you know, whether you're in Morocco or any place in the world or in the country, you're always coming to us. You're always with us, and it means so much. And I thank God for Pastor Stephen Thurston for introducing us, because he said you're going to love her, and you have become my sister. And I want to thank you for all that you are and do. For all that you are and do.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Well,
the feeling is overwhelmingly mutual. Thank you.
Blessings to you. Jewel, you need to get out there. Jewel's up in New York. Jewel, you need to go out there to Bridgehampton.
Yeah.
Jewel, come on out there, girl.
Come on, Jewel.
Or maybe, you know, when I'm in New York, Jewel and I can connect, and then we're going to come over to your church.
I would love that.
Oh, you know, we're going to do that.
Please. I would love that.
Oh, don't worry about it. We're going to be there. Sending you much love. But you know, I'm going to talk about this story today, Pastor. Just as you go, I want you to hear this. There's this young Black girl in Texas. And bless her heart, on track to be the valedictorian of her class. I mean, every child's dream, no behavioral problems. top student, respectful, someone beloved by her parents, but admired by them as well, and by her friends and by the community. But at her school in Lubbock, Texas, she's had lots of trouble. There were a group of white kids, and it's an overwhelmingly white population, who called her and the other black kids the N word. And they kept doing it. And she, instead of striking out, went to the teachers, went to the principal, went to the powers that be, and they did nothing. So finally, one day, this young man, who was very aggressive and in front of his white friends who would laugh, he did it, and that was it for her. She grabbed him by his hoodie and slapped the living daylights out of him. Don't you ever call me that again. That's how they described it. And I said, I'm nonviolent, but I hear you, honey. That happened to my brother when he was in boarding school. He went to the headmaster. If you had so many demerits, you could not come home on the weekend. So Jesse and Jonathan were very, very careful not to get demerits because they wanted to come home, because you could come home every other weekend. And this guy kept calling him the N-word and wouldn't stop. Well, so they punished her, put her in a school for truant kids, for kids with behavioral problems for 45 days. And now she might not be the valedictorian, although I doubt that they would have let her be the valedictorian given their apparent racism. And so we're going to be talking about that. Let's talk about this case. Do our black children, our children who have been not bullied, we have been lynched on the N-word. Do you not have a right to defend yourself? He put away. Why wasn't that boy put away in that school for 45 days? Why her? Why not him? And the rest of his crew. So I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. The phone lines are open. I want to know what you think about this case. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. 773-763-9278. 773-763 WCPT. Can you believe that?
It's terrible. Absolutely terrible.
Like you put her away in a program for 45 days and not him. But this is the thinking of these folks. The thinking is so off, because you know what? There's no pejorative for white people. They have a pejorative for everybody else. They got a nasty nickname for everybody, even the white underclass. They have PWT. I'm not going to even call that, because no one is trash. I mean, what is wrong with you?
That's right. And for her to endure that punishment when nothing was done after several complaints, I really hope
as a child
that the parents have a plan in place.
Well, the NAACP and her parents are suing the school district and the school, and they should. That having been said, enough already. Why? Where? Who is this boy? They know, the press know who he is, but they, of course, they protect him. He's a child. He's a minor. I respect that. But that having been said, where are his parents? They need to answer for this.
Right.
Who are you raising?
Yep.
Because even without the N-word, you're raising someone who is mean-spirited. And he'll do only God knows what. Right. Pastor, before you go, what do you think about that? I know, oh my gosh, I saw this story yesterday, and I said, are you for real? And she became suicidal at one point. Thank God she didn't do that.
I agree. Yeah, thank God. I agree with you wholeheartedly that the parents should sue. And I hope all of their complaints are on record. None of that should not be tolerated at that school. And it's just the same vicious cycle of allowing those with a certain hue to get away with things that those who don't have it would never. It's the constant disparity between the two races, or multiple races between us and them. And it's really upsetting. And so now potentially this young girl, her whole future could be ruined or marked because of this incident, even after she tried to get so much help. for the
Absolutely.
situation.
But you know what? I hope it'll turn her into a
Disheartening.
fighter. I hope that this will be a great. I
Hope
hope she
so.
will. I hope she will not be gutted. I hope she'll grow from this. Because
Mhm.
the only reason God
Absolutely.
allowed her to have the experience is because she's strong enough to take it.
Yeah.
'Cause-
Well, clearly she's already proved herself to be a fighter in one
Yay.
capacity, and she is. But
Don't
she didn't lead
you
with that,
call
so
me
I
that.
give her all the credit in the
I
world.
do. Don't you call me that. I said, yep, he deserved that one. You earned that one, buddy. And then, of course, someone
Yeah.
saw that how this was going to go down, so they started filming it on their phone. I said, but did you
Mm,
film it when they were calling her the N word? Did you do that?
agreed. Correct. Correct. Correct.
No.
Correct.
She said, I told you to
No, they didn't.
stop using that word. Oh no. And they're not even using his name. Well, no. We need to find out what his name is and put it out there. hmm If
Exactly.
you're tough enough to
Exactly.
do it, then you know what? You're going into manhood. Y'all are both 17. You're coming into manhood. Then you just need to stand before the world and tell people why you did it.
Exactly.
No. Girl, don't
Precisely.
play with me. Because my parents would make us stand before the world and apologize.
Stand by, please.
Okay, who do we have here?
We have Reverend Wilson, Attorney Jones, and Attorney Connolly. We do not have Miss Wells.
Okay, no worries. Everybody, Chappelle broke her wrist.
Stand by.
We can change the world.
Pray for Chappelle,
Change the
everybody.
world. Change the world. We can change the world. We can change the world. Change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world. I am green.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. You know what ordinarily you hear on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. We hear Chappelle Wells, celebrations by us. She's taking these last couple of orders today, but you know what happened to her? She broke her wrist. Everybody sent Chappelle some. I know. I said, wait a minute. How's she going to be able to cook? Is that selfish of me? Yes, it is. Yes. But more than that, she works so hard. She works so hard. She's about to become a grandma again. She's very excited about that. And she's been working through this period. One of the reasons we started advertising her on this show because so many small businesses during the pandemic, she took an 80% hit in her business. Can you imagine? I said, no, can't let you do that. So, we're going to be working with you small businesses because now she has so much business that she has to limit the number of orders she has to take for the holiday season. So we're grateful. We're grateful to you for all of that support. But that having been said, there are a lot of small businesses out here. Just go up and down your street and see them and give them your business. I'm all for the big box stores. I think they're great. But where would we be without these small businesses? Where would we be? We can't cede ourselves over to the big corporations because that's very dangerous for us. So sending her much love, of course. Celebrations by us, 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546. I tell you, I plan to get my string beans with ham hocks and my greens, my mixed greens with ham hocks, and my chicken. I plan to get all of that. So it's going to be great. But I'm just going to pray for her today, and everybody send her some love. Send her some love. What happened in Slayton, Texas? The story goes, according to this NBC report, the black girl's hands were shaking as she approached a white classmate in gym class. Autumn Roberson Manahan said, her voice quivering, I told you to stop using that word. Autumn is 17, a senior at Slayton High School. On track to be the valedictorian of her class. It's a majority white school, overwhelmingly. There are only a few dozen black kids there. But she asked the boy for 4 days in a row to stop using the N-word in class, and he used it, directed it at her to try and break her down. And she told her parents, and they spoke with school officials. Nobody did anything. Now, he said the slur anywhere he could, talking trash on the basketball court while cleaning up at the end of the class, anything that he could do to absolutely destroy this straight A student. There are only about 24 black students at that small town high school just outside of Lubbock, Texas. And they've all been complaining about racial harassment. So why was she punished? Why was she sent to a school for truant kids, for kids with behavioral problems for 45 days? Why wasn't he? I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. Why is her honor of being the valedictorian of her class, why is that now in peril? Why her? Why is she paying the price? Why not these white kids who harassed her? So, I said, let me just, go to Attorney Darrell Jones, chairman of the Transformative Justice Coalition, leading civil rights lawyer, of course, another lawyer, brilliant political strategist. When I sent this story to Attorney Erin Connolly, she said, Lubbock, yeah, I can believe it. And then, of course, Reverend Jeanette Wilson, Esquire, of course, head of Push XL at Rainbow Push. But let me start with you. Just step back and give us the 30,000-foot view, if you will, Attorney Darrell Jones.
Well, thank you, Santita. Good morning. What Autumn experienced at this school in Slayton, Texas is just incredible. This is a young girl who, her mother actually attended the area school when she was there. They had moved out of Texas and then moved back in. And the mother and the father decided that, they wanted their kid to go through the school. And so when Autumn attends the school, there's a white student who is continually, white male student, who's continually calling her the N-word. And, she tells the student to stop numerous times, to stop. And finally, she had gotten to the point where she had had enough. And she's in gym class, and he has his hoodie on, and he's walking by her, and several times continues to call her the N-word. She then starts trembling, gets really upset, grabs him by his hoodie, and then starts hitting him and telling him, in a way that many black mothers in my area used to do, hitting him with the symbol, right, on tone, saying, stop calling me
Don't
that
you
name.
call me that name in between slaps. I'm not mad.
That's right. That's right. And, and she's going to, if the school would not take the responsibility and the steps to stop him from calling her and terrorizing her in school, then she was doing what she felt as if she needed to do to stop the attack on her. And it was recorded by one of the other students. So, of course, it went viral. They recorded it on their phone and put it up on social media. But interestingly, the school, in their response, obviously revealed Autumn's name, but did not reveal the white student's name. That was the instigator of all of this. In addition to that, Autumn was subsequently went to the hearings, the disciplinary procedures there at school, and the white administrator, and I believe Latino administrator, actually sent Autumn to an alternative school for 45 days as her punishment, where it's supposed to be a very restrictive environment. It's unclear what, if anything, happened to the white male student who was the instigator in all of this. When the school did its investigation, they found that many of at least 6 of the students in the school that were in the gym class supported what Autumn said with regards to the other student calling her the N-word and walking by her and her telling the student to stop. So, there's a lot that's going on there. Autumn now has gone under counseling. She went through psychological counseling as a result of this. It's had a devastating impact. She was a very good student on her way to being class valedictorian before this happened. And she ends up now in counseling. She ran away because it was just so traumatic for her. There were thoughts that she might try to attempt suicide because of all the pressure that was brought upon her at that school from that student. And come to find out that this wasn't a singular incident for autumn at that school. But the school apparently has a pattern, a practice of many of the white students doing this to many of the African American students that are there. And it's only, let's be clear, it's somewhere between 2 and 3% of the school is African American. That's it. So there are not a lot of African American students that are at the school. So that's sort of the framework from which we're working with this fact pattern, Santita. And my heart goes out to Autumn and the family. But the school didn't act, so now there's a federal lawsuit that's been filed to hold the school accountable for what it did not do, its failure to provide a safe environment for the African American students that are attending their school.
Call us at 773-763-9278. 773-763-WCPT. What do you think of this case? Because now NBC News, for example, who have covered this story extensively, they have been trying to reach the family of the student, not even the student himself, but the family of the student. And they're not available for comment. He was not sent away to the school for the kids with behavioral problems, attorney Aaron Connolly. Autumn was sent away. Autumn is the one, he's just going on about his business. Attorney Aaron Connolly, your thoughts? And why'd you say Lubbock?
Ooh.
Yeah, it figures.
Well, I think when we think about a place like Lubbock, and I've had friends live there, attend school there, and have heard stories of similar incidents with less impact, maybe less of a newsworthy experience. But still, what we see in Lubbock, what we see in many schools across the country, and I don't want to limit this just to Texas or the South, in some advocacy and client work I've done, I've seen a very similar situation with a school district in suburban Detroit, for example, where there is a culture within the school district and that works with the culture often in a town and a police department that enforce some of these rules with school resource officers. And what happened here was Autumn was a victim of a system that perpetuated bullying, that perpetuated targeted harassment with racial undertones and provocation. This was not just one student. This was a targeted experience that this school allowed to happen, right? So there are multiple young boys from the facts of this case that show that she was targeted because of her race. She was consistently bullied and called the N-word over and over again. She asked these students to stop. She did so respectfully at first. She became more forceful. Teachers, administrators, and other students witnessed and allowed this behavior, this targeted personal harassment of this bright young woman, to cause her to go to a breaking point. And to be honest with you, if I had experienced this in the same way that young Autumn did, I would have done a heck of a lot more in that gymnasium than what she held herself to. And I want to take a moment to think about your child, a child that you love, that's put in that situation where they're harassed every day, where they're afraid to come to school, a place where they're supposed to be excited, that's supposed to be a safe space. And instead of the adults in the room saying, I protect you, that this harasser should be immediately suspended, then if it continues, this young man should have been expelled. He's creating essentially a hostile environment for not only Autumn, but these other students, period.
I mean, expulsion. Yeah.
Yes.
You get him out of the body. He's a virus.
Yeah. Right. And allowing this type of behavior to happen more than once shows to the other students, hey, you're going to get a free pass for this. This is okay. You are condoning this behavior. And it goes to create this larger wave of culture within the district that is clear that this has been going on, that there's some intimidation or culture of fear where administrators do not feel that they can adequately, or they don't care, to protect Black students. And if this is happening to Black students, it may be happening to other students. There's clearly a culture that allows this bullying and allows and condones systematic racial discrimination within this high school. The administrators need to be looked at. The teachers in this school need to be looked at. The relationship that the police and the enforcement mechanisms with this, clearly there's some problems. And I would love to hear the panel's thoughts on this alternative school that they have these students in that does not sound like it's conducive to any sort of learning environment for anyone. It sounds like a place of fear. So that's a whole nother issue, that students are allowed to be put in that system instead of receiving a normal and supportive education, right? So there's a lot to unpack here, Santita. I'm devastated for this young woman's family. Sounds like she was on an amazing path, and I think she can still get there, but only if we hold these folks to some sort of account and do not allow this type of bullying for our young people.
Well, you know what? You can't let them,
Holiday season.
you can't let them break your spirit, because the fact is our ancestors have endured even more. This should be a building moment, not a breakable moment for her. And that's where, this is where, when I look at my Jewish brothers and sisters, because they have been raised, my friends who are in their 30s and 40s who are Jewish, it's as if the Holocaust happened to them. And you've got to keep your children vigilant. What do they say? The price of liberty is eternal vigilance. You have got to do that. So these, this is an awful thing. Yep, I get it. But no, you have to then turn around to your child, as painful as it will be. Jeanette Wilson, Reverend Jeanette Wilson, Esquire, head of Push Excel. You got to strengthen them. But this is a horrible thing. Jeanette, they sent her to the school for the truant kids, for the kids who have behavioral issues. They didn't. This boy, what is the deal with that?
I think this is a topic that really sparks the need for. First of all, it showcases the level of complicity for discrimination that exists within our public school systems across the country. This just highlights what happens to many students, whether they're in private boarding schools or whether they're in these public schools. There are school administrators who embrace discrimination. They embrace this atmosphere of bullying and hostility perpetrated by students. The fact that none of the administrators responded to deal with the boys, not just one, that were bullying and taunting this child. The whole school atmosphere seemed to support the notion that this is what kids do. And the fact that the young man and the young men, because there's one young boy that was the leader, but there was a whole group of other students that were supportive of the taunts, the bullying, the words, and they watched this without any support to the young lady. Women undergo this kind of treatment in schools all the time. It reminds me of what Linda Brown experienced, the young lady in the Brown versus the Board of Education case. It reminds me of what happened to the Little Rock Nine. The fact that we enter a school, we're academically ready and prepared, and still we are treated as if we don't belong, as if we are somehow different than the rest of the students because of the skin color. Now we're going to have that same thing with sexual orientation in schools. The same thing with students of different cultures. Young girls that wear hijabs are bullied and mistreated in schools. And this kind of atmosphere, it's not just in the South. It's not just in, we'll say, oh, that's just Texas. No, it happens in Illinois. And these school districts, these enclaves where a majority people feel that our children are better and our children are special. You've seen this bullying result in kids coming up to school and terrorizing and shooting other children. This kind of violence And this alternative idea that you take a child who was the victim, convert her to the perpetrator, and damage this child for life. Send her to an alternative school as if she is some incorrigible kid that doesn't belong in regular society. And it's to send a signal, as the slave masters used to do when they lynched us on trees outside of churches. It is to send a signal to the rest of the community that this person doesn't belong here, doesn't fit here, and so we have to remove them from our midst. And, Reverend Jackson often says every child can achieve with this, the 5 A's of education. You have to have the appropriate atmosphere, both at home and in the school. For that young lady to go to school every single day and be bullied and taunted every single day, not because she was academically unprepared, not because she was tardy or truant, but because the kids were teasing her, calling her out of her name, making her feel different, and that she didn't belong there. And it says to parents in the community, we don't fight back. I thank God that she has strong parents and a will to say, I'm not going to accept this.
Well, you know what, Reverend Wilson? I think, because punishing people who fight back, because I think that's also one of the signals that's been sent. That if you dare to fight back, if you dare to speak up, if you dare to step to this boy, this young man, who is attempting not just to intimidate you, who's threatening you, how dare you come to him? Oh, no. I mean, and then it makes me, I'm glad that she had enough wherewithal to step to him. I really do. And I say that as someone who is nonviolent, but at some point you cannot be violated and you must let people know, don't play with me. Don't do it. And that is where, and she didn't, because even as a corporate media say that she snapped. I'm like, wait, snapped? She responded. She said, wait a minute, are you serious right now? And as the other Black kids just stood there, I guess. And that makes me sad too.
This school had a culture of these incidents and no one did anything. Not a teacher, not any one of the administrators, not the principal.
Not the superintendent.
The superintendent, nothing. The whole town. This is a small town. It's like one of our suburban school districts. There was no response, and this is not the first time. This has been happening. So that meant there is a culture of expectation and acceptance of that kind of behavior in the school. And apparently other parents were fearful. They didn't say anything in school board meetings, just ignored it as if this is the normal behavior of schools. And we see that happening across the country. That's why at Push Excel, we're having a major statewide meeting initially with the school board in the state of Illinois. We can't just sit by and let stuff happen in school buildings and say absolutely nothing.
Well, you know what? Let me make this recommendation to you, because the Push Excel program was launched to national acclaim. I remember when Vice President Hubert Humphrey, on his deathbed, called my father to come and see him. And he said, I've been watching you down through the years. And this was at the beginning of 1977, was it? And he said, I've been watching you and Jesse, you've grown and grown and grown and grown. I mean, in 1977, my father, at the beginning of 77, he was about 35. He was very, very young. He said, look, and this program, this Push Excel program that you have, it is so special. I think it can save not just Black kids, it'll save America's kids. So I've been making calls to my colleagues, because they know that I'm on my way out. And I want you to meet them, and I want you to get the help that you need to continue to grow this program. And it's a national program. And now, since COVID, we do things by Zoom. And this should be a national call, Reverend Wilson, because this is happening it's happening in Texas, it's happening in New York, it's happening in California, it's happening from coast to coast, it's happening to Black kids, it's happening to brown kids, it's just happening. And so when we come back, let's talk about it, everybody. I want to know what you think. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Call in. Renee, Nina, everybody, all of you who've been making these comments, because, the fact is we have not heard about this story. I was looking at Morning Joe this morning, and I enjoyed them, and I realized that they are a talk show. They didn't talk about this. They talked about Trump for the first 15, 20 minutes. I don't care about him. This is what's impacting our children. Stop having these silly side conversations. So what, he's selling NFT cards. What? So what? Y'all keep talking him up and you're blowing him up. I'm sick of that. You've got a girl down here. You don't know what God has put in Autumn Roberson Manahan. You don't know what genius is inside of this girl that these people are trying to snuff out. This is what impoverishes America. We cannot afford to throw any human being away. Not just in America, but all around the world. And we do it every day. We cast people away because we try to break their spirit. Who is this boy and who are his parents? What is his community? Why do you have to diminish her to lift yourself? What's wrong with you? If you are a little person on stilts, you're still a little person. You're not a giant, darling. Who are you? What is wrong with you? What is wrong with us? What is wrong with the school district putting that girl in a school for children who don't know how to behave? Well, maybe they were giving us the signal. They're telling us how they really feel. She doesn't know how to behave, but I want her to be a runaway slave. And you know what a runaway slave is? I just heard you, Attorney Jones. Have you heard of drapetomania? It's a psychological condition. Has anyone on the panel heard of drapetomania? I'll say this very quickly before I go to break. Drapetomania, my brother Jonathan, Congressman-elect Jackson, said, have you heard of drapetomania? He said, you know almost all the words in the dictionary. I said, no, I don't. He said, yeah. Drapetomania is a psychological condition formulated by psychologists during the time of slavery. If you ran away from slavery, if you defied slavery, you had a sickness, and they called it drapetomania. I'm glad Autumn has drapetomania. Back on the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. I'm so sick of that. I don't know what to do. And we're on Facebook Live, and I am furious. The more I think about it, the angrier I get about this.
Well, and the troubling thing is, when they're now speaking about her, right now, are they in violation of, moving forward, discriminating against other students that are already vulnerable with mental health issues that have potential IEPs? A lot of times the students that are targeted and bullied across the country are those students. Right. So the district is really risking some additional lawsuits by perpetuating this on top of the injustice already perpetuated against Autumn. Right. So I think that has to be a part of the conversation, that so many of these students, 45% of high school students surveyed, say that they have had some sort of mental health crisis in the last year, higher than ever. 1 in 4 are thinking about committing suicide. In general, you add something like this, and again, I am just looking at her composure that she addressed in that gym, and I don't think she should have been disciplined at all. But
I think several things. All of us need to collectively write a letter calling for the U.S. Department of Education to conduct an investigation of this school district and its patterns and practices of ignoring blatant discrimination among students and bullying, and expand that survey to school districts around the nation. This is not one isolated school district. This happens to have reached the news. And I think that the Department of Education has failed to make sure that our students are attending schools in an atmosphere that promotes learning and collegiality. I know for a fact, I've talked to several private high schools. They have the same kind of issue, and the parents feel that, my child's going to a better school. Therefore, they say nothing. They remain silent, hoping that it'll just go away. And it doesn't. This girl experienced all sorts of emotional trauma that she shouldn't have had to deal with. And who knows how the teachers who said nothing were treating her. Even though she had the grades, she's now in a hostile environment and no one addressed the environment. It's happening across the nation. So we are going to draft a letter to the United States Department of Education because there must be a pattern and practices investigation.
And use this case because the NAACP is suing, but maybe you should file a Friends of the Court brief. Push Excel should. Speak with Attorney C.K. Hoffler about it, Attorney Darrell Jones. You all should be working on that. I mean, I'm not an attorney. That having been said, there's two
things. There's a case that we should support, but there's also action that can be initiated by the Department of Education.
Oh no, I'm saying all of the above. All of the above.
Absolutely.
I'm saying all of the above. I'm not absolving the Department of Education for any responsibility. I'm not doing that. I'm saying all of these things have to happen because you're the head of a program. Historically, when the Push Excel program really began to gain steam, they filled up the Superdome in New Orleans. I went to Carnegie Mellon for an engineering program when I was a rising senior in high school. It was an engineering program. Never will forget it. And they had a group of kids who came from New Orleans. You had a group of kids who came from, it was a national program. And they let some high school seniors in, but it was a college program. And what was interesting to me was all these kids had been to a Jesse Jackson Push Excel rally. And that summer, the summer of 1980, that's all they were talking about. Lou Grant was so moved by the program, he did a special on it. And it was a very popular television show at the time. And I just think we have to build upon that because it is a program that has shaped so many people. But what happened to this girl? Oh man, I can only imagine. And this is the kind of thing that this atmosphere is why Herschel Walker, who to me is a broken man, he's a broken guy, he really is. He would not participate and support the Black community when things like this happened in his small town. He had been beseeched, begged by Reverend Jesse Jackson, Mrs. Coretta Scott King, Reverend Joseph Lowry, all these folks to get involved in a really, really tremendous racial incident that happened in his small town. He wouldn't touch it. He sided with white folks who did not like him, but he was their hero, wink nod. Y'all keep talking because I am just really I think of this child. I am, and my niece who has been in prep school, she's heading an initiative that deals with issues like these, because this is what they're saying in prep schools. It doesn't matter. Public school, prep school is the same thing. They're dealing with the same kind of hostility.
And one of the things that Sky, your niece, did, which I thought was just powerful, she began to organize students. Mm-hmm. And we had a town hall, a virtual town hall discussing. But she organized students at other prep schools mm-hmm. that were experiencing the same thing, but afraid to speak out, afraid to challenge the system because their parents felt that they were there on scholarships and you just have to suffer it to be so. But I remember Naima spent a summer at IMSA, the Illinois Math and Science Academy, and she would call us and talk about how that school, while they were there, they couldn't go out to to some of the stores because of the level of hostility the students would be subjected to Black students. So it's a culture in this country that we must address, and it's not just this Texas case is one that it's like it gave us a real direct view of what our kids experience across the country mm-hmm. and accepted it silently. And I'm just saying teachers were complicit, administrators, and the community, the board, those school boards
Oh, stand by. Okay, thanks, honey. Next time, give me a bit of a heads
That's
up.
my bad.
No, it's not your bad. It just happened.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world. I am grieving.
Hey, everybody. Call me at 773-763-9278. Let's talk about this case down in Texas where this young black girl, Autumn Roberson Manahan, was called the N-word, and no one in the school system would protect her. No one in the school system would protect her. Finally, she took matters into her own hands. She snapped. This is a straight A student, someone who was on track to become the valedictorian of that class. And this young white boy kept calling her the N-word and would refer to her people as N's. And she grabbed him by his hoodie and slapped the living daylights out of him. And they sent her into a school for kids with disciplinary problems. Now, I want you to call me at 773-763-9278 and tell me what you think. You ought to be outraged by this. Because whether you're black, brown, yellow, or red, when you are violated, when they tell you that you are not to speak out against your violation, that's what they're telling you. That's what the establishment is telling you. And that ought to be unacceptable to you. 773-763-9278. I'm Santita Jackson on WCPT 820. Nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to meet my morning stars over here on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. The Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, and meet us on the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. That's the only page that you can befriend, where you can befriend me, everybody. Santita Jackson and Friends. Got a tremendous panel as we're talking about this case in Texas. The NAACP and her parents have filed a lawsuit against the school system, but I think other people need to join in, because we need to lift up this young lady, and because in so doing, we are going to lift up a lot of other kids who've been silenced, who might be afraid to speak out. They need to be empowered. They need to know that they are somebody, and they should not take this kind of maltreatment. And where is this young man who did this? Where are his parents? Where's his family? Why was she sent to be disciplined? Why not him? And the other boys and persons, boys and girls who were involved in this, young men and young women, seniors in high school, people who are on the precipice of being able to vote. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Want to hear your thoughts. In the meantime, in Chicago, we got a little snow, everybody, last night. 33 degrees, some snow showers. They will be continuing today. 33 will be our high. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 31 degrees. Snow showers. Maybe we'll have a white Christmas after all, everybody. Did you see Thursday night football? Well, if you did, you got a treat. The 49ers bested the Seahawks 21-13. In the NBA, it's going to be an active night tonight. The Timberwolves will be playing the Thunder, and the Knicks will be playing the Bulls right here in Chicago. The NHL, the Golden Knights 4, Chicago 1, and Chicago will be playing Minnesota, the Wild. This evening, everybody, it's snowing all over the country. Please, everybody, be careful as you're traveling and getting ready for the holiday season. Russian missile attacks have been reported today in multiple Ukrainian cities, including Kiev, knocking out power and water supplies. The new defense bill, spending bill, also includes a provision that rescinds the U.S. military's COVID-19 vaccine mandate. Republicans have been lobbying to kill the vaccine requirement for service members. What do you think about that? They have done that. An attack on free expression. Elon Musk, the Twitter CEO, the CEO of Tesla, he is under fire for suspending journalists from Twitter. Of course, he's a self-proclaimed absolutist. The ACLU and others have said this is an attack on free expression. He justified his decision by claiming that those suspended, Keith Olbermann, Drew Harwell of the Washington Post, Michael Lee of The Intercept, Ryan Mack of the New York Times, and on and on and on, shared real-time details about his location. He said imperiling his family, putting them in real danger. He called them assassination coordinates. What do you think about that, everybody? 773-763-9278. I got to tell you, I don't think you should be publishing where people are. I really don't. And maybe it's because I grew up with assassination threats every single day. That's beyond the pale. We shouldn't do that. A watershed moment. The U.S. House approved the statehood vote for Puerto Ricans. Congresswomen Nydia Velasquez and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, two of the four current Puerto Rican members of the U.S. House, were among those who celebrated the passage of the Puerto Rican Status Act on Thursday, as lawmakers made history by approving a binding process for a referendum in the territory regarding potential statehood. And those are just some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. In the meantime, we've been talking about financial freedom, and I want you to reach out to Team Hochberg. Do you have poor credit? Are you using do you have a credit card, or are you using your debit card? If you're using your debit card, that's the wrong thing to do. You can't build credit that way, and it's a bad thing. You're wasting your time and your money. Do you have massive credit card debt? Do you want to buy a house? You say, I don't have enough credit. Do you want to buy a house and you don't know where to begin, or a building? Call Team Hochberg at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, but particularly when you're trying to get out of a financial hole. You need to reach out to them. Call them at 855-56-DAVID or go to 56david.com. When you call them, you will just tell them everything. They have heard it all. They've heard it all. And they can help you to come up with a plan they can negotiate with these credit card companies for you. Don't you do it. Let them do it. They can help move you from your debit card to a credit card. They can help you to get a home. Yeah, you need to have a plan. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So I want you to follow Tom and Sonia. They have 2 kids. They had $100,000 in credit card debt. 17 credit cards, but they're living on their credit just like so many other people. They said, well, we'll just give Team Hochberg a shot. And aren't they glad they did? They were able to save their home, get their credit card debt all the way down. Their payments went down to about $2,800 a month. They were able to do that, but that's because they called Team Hochberg. Why don't you do it? Let that be your Christmas present to yourself, your holy season present. Get out of debt jail. Get out, get out, get out. All right, everybody, let's get back to this story. I want to hear what your thoughts are. 773-763-9278. Something needs to be done about what's happened to Autumn Roberson Manahan. Let me go to Eddie from Dallas, Texas. Eddie, how you doing?
How you doing, lady?
I'm doing fine. I'm glad to hear your voice today. Bless your heart.
I wanted to say praise God to your dad and stuff. Hopefully one day I'll get a chance to come up there and be in one of your seminars.
Oh, come on now.
The thing that I want to do, like I told the presenter, Herschel, I'm in Dallas. I grew up in South Oak Cliff and everywhere else. He played football, and the only thing, the attitude you see on TV, I walked up to some of the old football people. He never wanted to listen. We said, we don't care if you're black or white. We want everything to be equal. You move into one of the suburbs like out from Mansfield, and the first thing you hear is CRT. That's BS, because back in the 70s and 80s, we had a mixture of Hispanics, white, and everyone else that was teaching. But as far as that young woman, I would see their ass off. And what she did, it was respectable. Because anyone down here, we would have done more than grab the hoodie. I'm saying that as somebody that you see all the time, that I write sometimes. That's the way we really think. I mean, I'm multinational. I mean, I have dual citizenship, but I will not stand there and let somebody degrade me, degrade my family, or anything else without stepping to it. I mean, that's just my point. I mean, I had strong women, strong men in the family. I mean, besides just going to that, I mean, why did it take so long to have that happen? Inside of Mansfield, which is rated 8.5 to 9 or 10, both private and public, we had a black student, a black young man, just like him, just like her. Mansfield paid this guy's lawyer's defense to keep that out of the news. Research it. You've got a great set of panels. I didn't know that until it happened. Any takers on your panel? I will listen at this point.
Oh,
Thank you.
wow. No, Eddie, thank you so much. You can hurry on up to Chicago. Don't be intimidated by the snow. Get on up here. 'Cause we need your energy. Let me go to CD from Chicago. CD, how you doing? CD? Okay, let me try one more time. CD? Okay,
He's on.
my board operator. Let's just try and get CD up. Let me go back to my panel very quickly. Everyone continue to call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. At the bottom of the hour, we're going to be talking about WikiLeaks. Are you surprised by all the things that Chip Gibbons was able to reveal to us about what WikiLeaks has revealed? Are you surprised that WikiLeaks has not published any bad information? Everything they have published has been true.
We have CD.
So let's talk about it, everybody, at the bottom of the hour with Chip Gibbons. In the meantime, CD, I've got you up now. How you doing?
Hey, how you doing, Santita?
It's
Good
great
morning.
hearing your voice.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the young lady, and I thought about it as soon as I heard the story. Somebody, I know it's a real big shot in the dark, but somebody that could advocate for her, that could relate to her, is Candace Owens. Candace Owens, if the world was right, Candace Owens could be a huge advocate for her, because she did this, went through racial discrimination, and the NAACP stood up for her back in the day. Candace Owens could be an excellent advocate for that young lady.
And she still
If
should
the
be.
world were
She
not
still
topsy-turvy.
Yeah. No. I mean, look, whatever her political views are, what they are, that having been said, right is right and wrong is wrong. She could still be an advocate for this girl. And she might come at it from a place that's different from where I might come at it from, and maybe not. That having been said, I think, right is right if it's in the trash can, wrong is wrong if your mama does it. You remember that, CD? Just stand up for this child. This is not supposed to happen to your child. They are not supposed to be mistreated in this way. And I mean, CD, what do you make of the fact that they said her, the girl who had been not bullied, I'm so sick of that expression, she had been harassed, feeling like a lynch mob was around her. That's what she felt like. Don't give me that little lightweight bully mess. Are you kidding me? When you use the N-word in America, bad things happen to Black people. We don't live.
Absolutely.
I can't speak to anybody else. Other people we get routinely lynched. We've been lynched so much, you got a museum to it. And when they opened the museum, they had more than 5,000 commemorative objects denoting lynchings that they were able to prove. And you spread that over 400 years, that's a lynching per month. Over 4,800 months, that's a lynching per month. Plus. So not only was she angry, she was scared, Jeanette. Reverend Jeanette Wilson, head of Push Excel. And I want Attorney Jones and I want Attorney Connolly to respond to that. This girl's in this town that's hostile. She's in this school that's hostile. No one's responding to her. She had to be frightened.
I'm sure she was. And then you take me out of the school and place me in, and we keep saying alternative schools. Those are basically juvenile detention centers. That's jail. That's not just another educational institution.
I never said it was alternative. I called it what it was.
It's a jail. And so now here you have a valedictorian, honor student, now being treated as if she is a problem child, that is, if she is a violent person that we cannot tolerate inside our buildings any longer. When you remove a child from school and expel them, you are saying they are a danger to themselves and to other students. That's what they said about this child. She is due all sorts of, her parents, her family, they owe this child money for how she has been abused. She had to go in the hospital to have emotional stability, psychiatric evaluations, and treatment as a result of not just what happened in the school, but the fact that she was jailed for something that she did not cause to happen, something that she was responding as a defense, self-defense, to protect herself. She responded to days and weeks. We don't know how many hours of taunting and abuse that she suffered from this boy and others in that system. And nobody said, let's remove these children from the school. Let's bring their parents in to understand what kind of home atmosphere do these children come out of. So there's layers of stuff that happened to this one little girl for no reason. Nobody looked back and said, why were they harassing and taunting her every single day? That's why she responded the way she did.
Absolutely.
Like, I can't take this any longer.
You know, I mean, and she was on track to be the valedictorian. You don't know how he felt about that, Attorney Jones.
Yeah, and Santita, I think that Reverend Wilson certainly is on track in talking about the environment of the school. One of the things that we've got to keep in mind that at the school, at the Slayton High School that she was attending, there are about 386 total students, grades 9 through 12. Only 22 are Black students.
Mm-hmm.
So, when we talk about, that small percentage of students that then become, the prey, really, of the environment that's being created in that school. And we got to put this in perspective, right? On the first day of class, what's happening in autumn, as they do in many new students that are going to a school for the first time, they ask the new students stand up and say, where are you from? Autumn stands up and says the community that she's from there in Slayton, Texas, and one of the white students turns to her and says, "I run your block inward." Mm-hmm. So it's immediate. This is an environment that's being encouraged by the school because of their inaction. And the other piece that I found really troubling is that when they send these students to the disciplinary alternative education program, their DATE program, the students that go to that program, as you're talking about the jails, they're forced to wear orange jumpsuits as a requirement of being in that school. They're subject to even more racial taunting. If you look back, and I go into the summary from the report that was put out by the ACLU, the NAACP, and the Texas Civil Rights Project in this case, at the alternative school and at the high school, they have white students making the monkey sounds at the Black students, calling them porch monkeys, saying you're not worth anything. So this is an environment that's being really cultivated out of that school. We also know from that summary, Santita, that at the Slayton High School, at a football practice, right? This is Autumn's brother, I believe, runs out of breath, and so he's on the sideline gasping for his breath, trying to catch his breath to get back into practice. One of the white students comes up to him and says, what? He can't breathe, just like George Floyd. This is the environment that they are nurturing out of that high school. It's problematic, and having filed OCR complaints and having been a part of enforcement of OCR complaints, the federal government and the U.S. Department of Education has got to get involved in the education process of these students, because they cannot learn in an environment that is so hostile to them. We spoke previously, Santita, of a lawsuit that was filed because we said that the school district wasn't providing adequate education for the Black students because of the environment that they had created, that the Black students couldn't learn in that environment. Well, I'm wondering if that's what's happening here. Do we see a similar situation here where they created such a hostile environment that the Black students can't learn? How does young Autumn go from being on track to being a valedictorian to finally being placed into a facility because she needs counseling because of the emotional trauma, a mental health facility for the emotional trauma that she's received at the school that's supposed to be teaching her? That's what bothers me a whole bunch in this whole mess, Santita.
Oh, but you know what? I think they're trying to teach her another lesson. They're trying to break her. See, we have to understand that we are in a situation where we are in a hostile environment. And this is where we have to teach our children, because I was raised, my brother, when they said my parents had to send my brother Jesse away from Chicago, not because they wanted him to go to boarding school. No, we didn't want to. I didn't want to see my brother go. One of the saddest days of my life was dropping him off at that boarding school in Indiana. My mother had tears in her eyes, and I had to turn away from her because my mother was not into watching you cry, and shed some tears. I couldn't believe it. But Chicago was so hostile to Reverend Jesse Jackson that his namesake had to get out of here. But you have to make your children strong. You got to make them strong. They shouldn't have to deal with this, but they need to be prepared to deal with this. And they need to understand that they must fight and they must know how to fight. That's important. Was she in a hostile work environment? So was Ernie Green in the Little Rock Nine. And yet they learned. And he became a top person, a trailblazer in corporate America. Even when you are in a hostile environment, you must be tough and you got to make it. Harriet Tubman made it. Dorothy Height made it. Fannie Lou Hamer made it. James Bevel made it. He and Marion Barry were on the same plantation, Daryl, and Aaron and Jeanette in Mississippi. And then they left the plantation in Mississippi and came out and changed the whole world. You can do it too. Don't let them break your spirit. That's what is unforgivable. And you need to find out who this boy is and who his parents are, and you need to put them on Front Street. They need to be held accountable, and they need to be made to answer publicly for what they've tried to do to this girl and all those other black kids there. Yeah, that's what needs to happen. Let's talk about WikiLeaks, everybody. I love you, Reverend Jeanette Wilson. Can't wait to see how you're going to proceed with this. And Attorney Aaron Connolly and Attorney Daryl Jones. Whew. Think about this, and it makes me hot. And it ought to make you hot. And you ought to join some organization and get involved so this does not happen anymore. It's happening to young black kids, and you know what's happening to Hispanic kids, and what's going to happen to poor white kids. Because that's the way it works. And it ought to be unacceptable. Let's talk about WikiLeaks. They have not told a lie yet. And Julian Assange has been in prison. Hi. What does that say about freedom of speech? Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Hey, hey, hey. Are my people still there? Jeanette?
Still
And
here.
okay.
Santita, this is Erin.
I'm
going to have to run out a little early today, so sorry about that.
You have
No
Attorney
worries.
Jones still.
Get John going early today for something he has to do before school.
give him my love.
I will. Great to talk to all of you. Thank you so much.
Sending you so much
Have a
love.
great weekend, Aaron.
Attorney Jones, would you like to stay with us as we talk about WikiLeaks? It's been very exciting.
I've got to go to my dentist appointment.
Oh!
I'd much rather go and talk about WikiLeaks, but
I
he does wait.
understand. Oh, bless your heart. I've got a dental appointment too. I've got all these medical appointments, everybody, that I'm taking so I can make sure that I'm all right. Amen, amen, amen. What is Zenobia? You say close the school down. Do you want to say anything in this minute before I switch topics? Attorney Jones?
I agree with your last point. I think that we all need to get involved with organizations to try to address these issues as they're occurring across the country. And, I tell you, if you go into
Miss Jackson, we have Chip Givens.
it's just incredible what they're doing to the black students there and the environment that they're creating for them to try to learn in. And we've got to be certain we take those steps to create environments where our kids can really learn and focus on learning and not be subject to the taunts and the terrorism. So that's where I would leave it. Thanks, Santita.
I hear you. And you know what? And I will say to the rest of the audience, and you have to give your children a spirit of somebodyness so they know how to fight back, so that they will be willing to fight back. And then you have to teach them how to do it. Nobody said that the road would be easy. That's what the song says. But I don't believe God brought me this far to leave me. Nobody said it's going to be an easy path. If freedom, if the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, what do you think the price of freedom is for the formerly enslaved? Are you serious? You got to fight. Those of you who sit here and say that we've made no progress, that Martin Luther King didn't do his job, that Denmark Vesey didn't do his job, that Nat Turner didn't do his job, that Frederick Douglass didn't do his job, that Andy Young didn't do his job, that Fannie Lou Hamer didn't do his job, that Jesse Jackson didn't do his job, and on and on and on. Really? They've been doing the job. What are you going to do as you make your lap around the track? Pick up the baton. You have to be willing to fight, and you need to know how. Nobody said you're going to walk into these schools. If you think, okay, so it was supposed to stop with Ernie Green and Charlene Hunter Galt. Is that really? No, darling, it doesn't stop there. No. You got to keep on fighting because these people don't believe that you are even human. They still think you're 3/5. Now, don't you believe it? And have enough somebodyness, have enough sense of yourself to fight back. Don't let these people play with you. And you must raise your children with that understanding. Not that you don't deserve this. No, of course you don't. But your grandmama didn't either, and your granddaddy didn't either. Your grandfather and grandmama didn't deserve to go into a segregated armed forces to fight fascism overseas to only deal with it here.
Miss Jackson, we have 30 seconds,
Okay.
And we have Chip Gibbons on.
Thank you. Hey, Chip. You caught me mid-rant, honey. How you doing? But,
Sorry.
There's this case in Texas where this black girl on track to be the valedictorian of her class, she was called the N-word by her fellow student, this white boy, and they would not stop him. And then they put her away for 45 days.
Stand by.
Are you serious?
That's horrible.
Oh, it's horrible.
That's
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. Oh, yes, we can. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am green.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. I had to bring him back twice. Chip Gibbons of Defending Rights and Dissent. He is their policy director. So brilliant. Chip, you're just so brilliant, and we thank God for you and all the information that you give us. But Chip has been talking to us about WikiLeaks and Julian Assange and why his case is so important. And many of you were surprised when he was on earlier in the week when Chip said, everything that WikiLeaks has published has been true. Every single thing. So what does that say? When the truth teller, the whistleblower's in prison, what does that say about Chelsea Manning? When you put her in jail, when you know that Chelsea Manning is transitioning and you put her in a position where she could be hurt in prison. Are you serious right now? All because Chelsea Manning told the truth? Really? Think about that, everybody. Think about that. Think about how we treat the truth tellers. Excuse me, not the whistleblowers. I'm going to stop calling them that. These are the truth tellers. Excuse me, Chip Gibbons. These are the truth tellers, the people who step out and say, you know what? I know I could lose my whole career. I could even lose my life. But in order to make America and the world better, I'm going to give you all this information so that you all can make the change because this is wrong. This is not supposed to happen. So talk to us. Publishing is not a crime. You have now Daniel Ellsberg, who brought us the Pentagon Papers. The Pentagon Papers arguably helped to hasten the end of the Vietnam War when Americans thought something was off. But when they found out actually that things were wrong, that wait a minute, many things were being committed in our name that were atrocious. Think of Lieutenant Cowley putting all those people in a ditch and killing them. Are you serious? Come on, y'all. Talk to me about Julian Assange. I mean, let's just start right here before we go back into this. Why is this case important? And why is he in prison? Why does America want to bring him back? Are we trying to treat him fairly? Okay.
No, we are absolutely not trying to treat Julian Assange fairly. I was chuckling, but it's not funny. It's a very grim situation. But why is this case unfortunate? I mean, at the end of the day, whether you like Julian Assange or not, you like WikiLeaks or not, Julian Assange is the first time in the history of the United States that an individual has been indicted under the Espionage Act for publishing truthful information. The Espionage Act has been repeatedly used against journalist sources, people in the government who have given information to the media. And while my organization opposes that, that's very different than going after the journalist or the publisher themselves. So the Nixon administration, they tried to stop the New York Times from publishing, citing the Espionage Act. When the Supreme Court rules that they can't put a prior restraint on the New York Times and the other papers who had printed that information, they left open the question as to whether or not they could be prosecuted after the fact. And a lot of the papers actually didn't publish any more sort of in-depth reporting on the Pentagon Papers. That was left to Beacon Press, which was a press associated with the Unitarian Universalist Church. And the Unitarians, really at great personal risk, published an annotated set of the Pentagon Papers given to them by the late Mike Gravel, then a senator. But since then, been this open question of what about the publisher, and multiple administrations have chosen not to go after the publisher or the journalist because they recognize it's such an apocalyptic move from the standpoint of the First Amendment. The Barack Obama administration, they prosecuted a record number of journalist sources under the Espionage Act, more than all previous administrations combined. They prosecuted Chelsea Manning. They indicted Edward Snowden. They attempted to prosecute Thomas Drake, who's an NSA whistleblower, whose case fell apart. There's a whole bunch of these cases. They're really all very tragic. But when it came to WikiLeaks, they said, no, we're not going to do this, not because they liked WikiLeaks, but because they recognized that any precedent set by a prosecution of WikiLeaks could be used against the New York Times, the Washington Post. I mean, what WikiLeaks is accused of doing is legally indistinguishable from what the New York Times does. And in some of these cases, the New York Times has done the same thing as when it comes to publishing the diplomatic cables. Obama was under heavy pressure to reverse course. The FBI and the CIA demanded a personal meeting with Obama to get him to change his mind, and he refused to do so. To his credit, although prosecuting Chelsea Manning, prosecuting Edward Snowden was not to his credit. Those were unfortunate escalations that put us down the path that we are now. But he wasn't willing to go that far. When Donald Trump comes in, he appoints Jeff Sessions, Mike Pompeo, William Barr, people like that who have long-term vendettas against WikiLeaks, who have long wanted to prosecute them, and who revamped the case against WikiLeaks. And it's worth commenting on just how every level of the U.S. government has at some point been involved in the war on WikiLeaks. Since Chelsea Manning was in the Army, the investigation was originally in the Department of Defense. It was turned over by the FBI. There were two separate FBI investigations, one based out of Virginia, one based out of New York, that was closed and merged into the Virginia one. As part of the New York investigation, FBI agents and a U.S. Prosecutor lied to the government of Iceland and entered to the country of Iceland under false pretenses. They were expelled. The NSA discussed having WikiLeaks declared I forget the exact terms, declared something that would allow them to do greater surveillance of it. The CIA and others declared them information brokers, not journalists, to get around the First Amendment protections. And then in 2017, when WikiLeaks published Vault 7, which was a series of revelations about CIA surveillance, Mike Pompeo, Donald Trump's very sort of bellicose CIA chief, went on an all-out war against WikiLeaks. And there's been revelations that have emerged that during this time, the CIA co-opted the security firm who was providing security to Julian Assange in the Ecuadorian embassy. Assange had sought and received asylum in Ecuador. The British government, clearly at the behest of the U.S. government, basically kept a 24-hour watch around the embassy. Clearly, they would arrest him if he left, even in a diplomatic vehicle. And it's worth, commenting that in Chile, when Pinochet took over, this fascist dictator, I mean, people seeking asylum would flee to the Swedish or Dutch embassies, and they would take them out of the country in embassy cars. That even Pinochet, right, a horrible dictator who murdered thousands of people, right, even he wouldn't go so far as to assault a political refugee in an embassy vehicle. But the British and the Americans made very clear that they would do this to the Ecuadorian government. So he's stationed there, and they co-opt the security firm, this Spanish company called UC Global that's currently under criminal investigation in Spain. And we've heard allegations from both people who worked for that company and former members of the National Security Council that the CIA plotted to assassinate Julian Assange or potentially kidnap him. And, you know, some of these kidnapping schemes that they were discussing that were made public by a report in Yahoo News that was based on I think, testimonies of 27 former intelligence officials. I mean, they included things like they were going to get into a shootout on the streets of London, or if he got to the airport, they'd shoot the tires out of his plane. They were plotting some real James Bond stuff. And of course, you know, James Bond is a series of films where it's fictional. If you start shooting at cars on the streets of one of the busiest cities of the world, if you start shooting out tires at an airport, I mean, you're going to kill people well beyond Julian Assange. But this is the depths of their obsession. And eventually they brought this indictment, and the indictment is 18 counts. 17 of those counts are brought under the Espionage Act. And all 17 of those Espionage Act accounts pertain to information that was published by WikiLeaks in consultation with the New York Times, The Guardian, El País, and other major papers between 2010 and 2011. They include the rules of engagement in Iraq, right, the rules for when you can fire upon people. They include diplomatic cables from the Iraq and Afghan wars, which show, you know, that the U.S. knew the Iraqi army was engaged in torture, and that they were turning soldiers over to the Iraqi army. It shows covering up of war crimes and atrocities. And it shows that we pretty much knew the Afghanistan war was unwinnable and not going very well. We continued to send patriotic people to die in that war for another decade at least. It includes the State Department cables. These are cables from diplomatic embassies around the world, and they're of grave interest because they show things like the U.S. Embassy in Haiti worked with Levi Jeans and Fruit of the Loom to bully the Haitian government into refusing to raise the minimum wage. The Haitian government wanted to raise its minimum wage. Haiti is one of the poorest countries in the world. It is the only successful slave revolution, and the U.S. and others have been punishing them ever since, you know, they freed themselves, and they still are doing this to this day. They showed how in Yemen we had a secret agreement with the Yemeni government where we would bomb the country of Yemen, and the Yemeni government would say it's our planes bombing ourselves. There's some very interesting cables from Italy that Stefania Morici, the Italian journalist who works very closely with WikiLeaks, from when Italy had a center-left government elected. They were very concerned within the State Department that they would not spend enough money on the war in Afghanistan because they'd be too pressured by trade unions to engage in social spending. So that's the way the U.S. views Italy and its country, that trade unions and center-left parties are a threat because they'll spend money on human needs and not war started by the U.S. I mean, there's stuff from almost every country in the world. I mean, there is stuff from every country in the world. It's a pretty comprehensive list of documents. I mean, it's hundreds of thousands of pages. No one person can read them all. But Verso published a book shortly after called The WikiLeaks Files, where they got different experts on different countries and regions. And, you know, they read the files from those countries and they published reports based on them. So it's an incredible look at U.S. diplomacy. And, you know, when Chelsea Manning was talking to the person who eventually turned her in about why she leaked this or why she gave this information to WikiLeaks, I mean, she mentioned two things with the Iraq and Afghanistan war logs. She wanted the people to know the truth about asymmetrical warfare in the 21st century. As Dan Ellsberg has commented, asymmetrical warfare is the euphemism we use for what we used to call colonial warfare. Where one side has tanks and guns and planes, and the other side has much less sophisticated weapons. That's why it's asymmetrical. And because she said that she had access to crazy, almost criminal backroom dealings, which is what these State Department cables are. In addition to showing the State Department acting as a lobbyist in Haiti for Fruit of the Loom, it shows them pressuring companies to buy weapons from...
Stop.
Yeah.
Our government acting on behalf of corporate America, essentially, to impoverish the Haitian people. I just know what you mean, because you're giving us a lot of information, and I just think it's important for us to understand, because that also helps us to understand the motivations behind war, right? Because many of our soldiers get overseas and they're angered by the fact that they are essentially taking bullets for mercenaries. Like what used to be Blackwater and things like that. They're the ones who are being paid $100,000 plus a year, and we're protecting them.
No, yeah. I mean, and it is. I mean, corporate America drives a lot of U.S. foreign policy. This is not one of the things he's indicted for, but, WikiLeaks also published the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It was this trade deal that was being negotiated that a lot of people thought benefited corporations, and it was being negotiated secretly, right? Our government was going to negotiate this trade deal. We weren't allowed to read it, and when WikiLeaks published it. The final thing that Julian Assange is indicted for, and 1/3 of all of the charges against him pertain to this, and you never hear it mentioned in the media, is he released the detaining assessment files from Guantanamo Bay. This is the U.S.'s assessment of people at Guantanamo. And I know that people who have had clients at Guantanamo have used some of this information to advocate on behalf of their clients. I know information about drone strikes in Pakistan has been used for civilian victims of drone strikes who are seeking justice, and they've been successful in what they've done. So this information has been of immense journalistic value. It's been of immense value to human rights advocates, and it's been of value to people who are victims of human rights abuses, and they're trying to put Julian Assange in jail for publishing it. And I'm aware that he's a very controversial figure in the U.S., and you can discuss the extent to which that's valid or if that's based on demonization of him or both. But, at the end of the day, none of that really matters when we're talking about putting someone in prison for publishing truthful information that was in the public interest to do so.
Yes, because no one is suing him.
This is also someone who has no, obligation to protect classified information. He's not a U.S. citizen. He's Australian. WikiLeaks is based in Iceland. He's not someone who's a government employee who signed a non-disclosure agreement or agreed to protect classified information. I mean, there's no grounds to go after him, and he's not even in this country. And we're, going overseas to bring him over here to essentially, do bad things to him, which is really outlandish. And it's worth pointing out that, multiple UN bodies have examined the treatment of Julian Assange and found it to violate basic international law. The United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention found that his time in the Ecuadorian embassy was orchestrated by the US or UK and Sweden and constituted a form of arbitrary detention. The United Nations Special Rapporteur on Torture, who's written about how he didn't want to get involved in the Julian Assange case because he thought Julian Assange was a bad guy and he thought his claims of torture were facetious, right? And then when he investigated, he learned everything he had been told about Assange was not true, and that he found he'd been the victim of psychological torture. So this is someone who's been subjected to repeated human rights abuses already. And we know if he comes to this country, he's going to be in solitary confinement. Mm-hmm. He's going to be in these sort of very restrictive units that are in line with international norms.
And you know what? Let me go to Renee. Renee has been chomping at the bit all day, and this has finally pushed you over the edge to call in. How you doing, Renee? Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you guys too, and thanks for taking my call. I'm doing okay. I just, I thought that freedom of the press, freedom of speech, was supposed to be like a check and balance for our government. But instead, people get punished to tell the truth about the government, even get killed. And it looks like there's an attack on journalists, period, because in Mexico, journalists are being killed, and some of the other countries in Central America, people are being killed. In South America, we know about the reporter who got killed in Saudi Arabia, and Biden said he was going to punish them, but nothing happened. And in fact, I think they just gave the guy immunity.
Well, because his father
Arabia.
named him head of state, so you can't prosecute.
Right.
Gosh.
Right. I wish that trick worked for other people. And then you had the reporter in Israel who got shot by the soldiers, and their family isn't getting, any help from our government. And over there, they're not doing anything. But it just seems like if you try to be a truth seeker and publish the truth, you get killed or you put in jail. And they weren't trying to help Julian Assange. He's been sick. They weren't trying to give him the treatment that he needed. They should have let him out alone. He shouldn't be in jail, period. But it's just peculiar that our Constitution doesn't seem to be working for everybody the way that it should. And it makes us worse off.
No, but stay right there, because you know what? It works when you work it. We're the ones who have to make the republic a republic. We're the ones who have to make the system work. That's why I want you to know about Julian Assange in his case, so it's not just something that you kind of gloss over in the papers, because he is being mistreated. He's being treated horribly, and we're seeing that from Autumn, Roberson, Manahan, to Julian Assange and other people, not whistleblowers, but truth tellers, and people who really want to make the society right. They're the ones who are punished. We have given the patina of respectability, Chip. Stay right there, Renee. Oh, well, be careful. Okay, bye-bye. Love you, girl. God bless you. We give the patina of respectability to the people who disrespect us the most. And then we see this man demonized. Because we cannot forget, everybody, that Dr. King was about the most hated man in America when he was killed. That enabled him to be killed because more than half of Black people disapproved of him. My father went to work for him. He and my mom went to work for him when he was moving into his highest level of unpopularity. After he won the Nobel Prize, it was kind of sort of downhill for him from there. Okay. I think it's important because it's important for us to remember that, because now, it's Dr. King, he's this exalted figure. He was not that in life. Malcolm X spoke to an empty ballroom. Y'all, when are we going to wake up, Chip? And recognize in real time the heroes among us? The people who are trying to make things right. Don't you think that Daniel Ellsberg is a hero? He said, prosecute me. We wouldn't dare. But if he had not given us those Pentagon papers, where would we be, Chip? The last 3 minutes belong to you.
I think Renee's comment is excellent. I would just say that, yesterday there was a press conference for Daniel Hale, who is a drone whistleblower who gave information to the media about civilian casualties in the drone program, as well as how the terror watch list is abused. And there was he's in prison right now for 49 months. And there was a press conference yesterday. Representative Ilhan Omar spoke at it. Daniel Ellsberg spoke at it, calling for Biden to commute his sentence. And, one of the speakers was also Steve Donziger, the lawyer who won the landmark judgment against Chevron and then got disbarred and put in prison. And he said something, and I was thinking of what he said when Renee was talking. He said, there's a wholesale attack in our country on people of conscience who speak out and challenge entrenched pools of power that hurt our society. And that's what we're seeing. And it's bigger than just Julian Assange. It is an attack on people who tell truths that challenge corporate interests, that challenge government interests, that are in the public interest, that are, designed to advance democracy and make us a more informed people about the decisions that are made in our name, but never with our knowledge, never with our consultation. I mean, nobody asked me whether or not we should be bombing Yemen. Instead, we said we're not doing it. It's the Yemeni government. Nobody asked me if we should, use our State Department to bully Haiti. So this is a wholesale attack on people who stand up to, entrenched power.
And we need to protect them as they seek to protect us. How can we support Defending Rights and Dissent, your organization?
You can visit us on the web at rightsanddissent.org, and there's all different ways there about how you can help us and get involved and contact your Congress member, write to Biden about Assange, just a whole bunch of tasks you can do.
Where is this? 30 seconds. Why is he being pressured now to release Julian Assange?
I just think a lot of people thought it wouldn't get this far. They thought it would solve itself if they just didn't get involved, and because it was controversial. And now we see that it's clear that U.S. government is serious about going through with this, and they're willing to set a precedent that will be used to harm the media writ large. And now that we're this far along, people are finally realizing they have to speak out against it, when it would have been helpful if they did this a few years ago.
Well, you know what? I think, what we cannot discount? I think we also need to look at the fact that corporate media is at an all-time low in terms of their trust from the American public. And that's dangerous for them. Increasingly, we do not trust them. We don't. We do not. And so they're fighting for their relevance too. And in fighting for Julian Assange, they might just do the right thing. Tell some truth. I'm Santita Jackson. I hope to see you on Keep Hope Alive on Sunday from 7 to 9 Eastern Standard Time. Go to your iHeartRadio app. We'll be right there. And go to your iHeartRadio app. I did a wonderful interview. I had a wonderful time with Sharon Pulliam yesterday. Thank you all for tuning in. But Sharon Pulliam is on Gospel 1390 here in Chicago. And just look them up. She's a fantastic singer and very inspirational woman. I love you all. And Chip, thank you for the work that you do. God bless you. Board operator, have a great weekend. Thanks for coming in. God bless everybody. Chip, is there anything you want to say to my Facebook Live audience before you go?
No, thank you. No, I've got to run, but it was very good to do the program as always.
Well, you're the best.
Thank you for keeping on the story.
Well, look, and if they come after me these people can't do anything else to a Jackson. Okay, they've done it all. We are not afraid. Okay, it's just we're over it. Okay, at some point somebody's got to stand up. We stand up for a lot of things that are foolish and that are not perpetuating in a healthy way. Somebody's got to stand up and say something. Speak truth to power. We're not on earth that long, y'all. We're not. We're not here long at all. So just do it. Do the right thing. Do the right thing. You'll have eternal peace for that. It's the day that you turn away from doing the right thing. A coward dies 1,000 deaths. Oh my goodness, do I know that? You die 1,000 deaths. Just do the right thing. Do the right thing. And think of Julian Assange today. Send a letter. Make a phone call to the White House and to your federal representatives. Let them know that you want him to be freed. Let them know that he did not publish anything that was untrue. Nothing. And don't you feel the need to know what your government is doing with your money and in your name? If we knew a portion of what our government does in our name with our money, we wouldn't allow it. Think about that, everybody. Think about it, and then do something. I love you, everybody. Can't wait to see you on Sunday on Keep Up Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. Who knows, I might just see you a little bit during the weekend. I love you. Thank you, Chip Gibbons. God bless you.